All righty, welcome everybody. Woo, that's right. We are here to talk today about accessibility. Great. So, my name's Patrick Clary. I'm a product manager on accessibility here at Google. And I'll be kicking things off. We also have a great group of presenters from different areas across Google with me here today. And there's a few things that I want you to take away with you as you leave today. The first one is why designing for accessibility is really so important and benefits our users. And this isn't just users with a disability or an accessibility need, but I want to get across that this actually helps all users. The second thing you'll learn about is accessibility on Android. You'll hear about what's coming in Android O, and you'll see some awesome new demos of these things. And then third is tips on user research for users who have an accessibility need. You'll hear about this, and you also see an inside look with a couple examples on things we've done at Google, how we perform research on a couple of different products. It's very exciting. So first, why accessibility? So accessibility is something that is near and dear to my heart, but I want to give you a few reasons why it's important, and I'm speaking to the developers, why it's important to developers to consider as well. So here's a metric that I actually find very compelling, right? One in five people will have a disability in their lifetime. This is just a staggering number. So addressing accessibility can have a direct benefit on these users. It's a huge benefit, right? It's actually a life-changing benefit. So for these users, it actually means the difference with connecting to friends, families, really taking advantage of the technology that mainstream users really use and enjoy. The second, as I mentioned, is that designing for accessibility really benefits all users. And let me give you a couple examples. So first, think about designing a product that's meant for a blind or a low vision user. So when you're doing this, you actually help users that might just have their eyes occupied. So perhaps they're driving, they're looking at another screen, they're not looking directly at their Android device. Another example is designing for a user that might have a motor impairment. So an example would be a tremor. This is an impairment that affects their use of a touchscreen. It makes it difficult for them to use a touchscreen. So designing effectively for these users actually benefits mainstream users who, for otherwise, they just can't use their touchscreen. Maybe they're holding groceries, maybe they're cooking, but they can't use their touchscreen effectively. And when you think about it this way, designing for accessibility is really about designing for the widest possible range of abilities within the widest possible range of situations. It's not really about designing for disabilities, it's about designing for all users. So where does Android fit in? So in Android, we have a series of settings, APIs, and services for accessibility. So settings, these really allow users to customize how their device looks and feels, right? APIs allow developers to build out their apps in ways that meet the needs of users who have accessibility needs, and also allows us to build accessibility services. So an accessibility service is a long-running, privileged program that runs on your device that either changes the way users consume the content of your device, or it changes the way they interact with your device. And we have a few here. These are 4 that Google has developed: TalkBack, BrailleBack, Switch Access, and Voice Access. So TalkBack and BrailleBack, these are services designed for users who are blind or have low vision. TalkBack is our screen reader. What this allows users to do is basically interpret the content of their device through an audio stream. So users will listen to what's on their device using TalkBack. BrailleBack, it's similar, but instead of an audio stream, the content goes to a refreshable Braille display. This is a little handheld Braille device where a user can scan their fingers across it and interpret the content on the screen. We also have Switch Access and Voice Access. These are 2 services that are targeted to users with motor impairment. So for example, as I mentioned, users that have a tremor. These are users that typically can't use a touchscreen. So with Switch Access and Voice Access, we actually provide full Android control without ever having to touch the screen. So with Switch Access, users typically use an adaptive switch device. You'll see an example of one of these later, but this is a physical hardware switch that a user might have mounted in front of them, mounted to a wheelchair, and they'll tap on the switch to linearly scroll through things on their device. Voice access actually allows users to control their device purely by voice. So you'll issue voice commands that correspond to touch controls. These are things like scroll up, scroll down, tap Gmail, go home, etc. So that's what we have on Android. For a deeper look into the upcoming version of Android, I'll hand it off to Maya and Victor.
Hello, thank you, Patrick. My name is Victor Tsaran, and I'm a technical program manager on the Android Accessibility Services team. For Android O, our major focus was to increase productivity for users of accessibility services. In particular, we looked at users who are blind and visually impaired and use TalkBack Screen Reader. We're introducing accessibility APIs to help developers who develop accessibility services for people with physical disabilities. One such service you guys already heard about is called Switch Access. Last but not least, we're introducing a new accessibility service which will help people with print and learning disabilities to read information on the screen. But let me start with new features for TalkBack. The first feature I would like to talk about is called Accessibility Volume. Behind the fancy words is an ability for someone who is blind or visually impaired, or specifically uses TalkBack Screen Reader, to adjust the volume of speech independently from the volume of media, for example, when watching a YouTube video or listening to music. We're doing this by introducing a new audio stream in O we called Accessibility Stream. As a developer of an accessibility service, what that means to you is that you will have to request this feature when writing your accessibility service. Otherwise, it is not available to you. So let me show you how this feature works.
Device unlocked. 3. Home. Pixel. Overview. Overview. Settings.
I will dismiss this guy.
Dismiss YouTube. Settings. Dismiss YouTube. Open YouTube app. YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube. Showing items 1 to 2 of 207. The developer show TL. Dr. 069. Google.
Hello.
The developer show TL. Dr. 069. 11K views.
So here's a typical
Advanced
situation.
Android app development online course
I'm trying to listen to TalkBack, and this thing is talking back at me. Oh my God, I can't hear anything.
More button.
What I can do right now, I can completely shut off the volume of the video,
Like this video. More button.
and I can still hear
Developer
TalkBack.
show. More button. Like this. More Google up. 024. This Google up next.
So this
autoplay.
is essentially how this works. So TalkBack user is now able to adjust the speech of the volume of the speech independently from the media volume.
100. 035 of
More details and links are on the
100. Expand.
Chrome 59 beta is now available with headless Chrome.
Incidentally, you will also notice that there is now a new accessibility volume slider at the top of the screen. So that, again, allows you, if you're a visual user, you can adjust this slider as well from the volume tray.
Elasticsearch,
Rewind.
MySQL,
Pause video. Play video. Home screen 1 of 2.
So the next feature I would like to talk about
308. Screen off. Ringer
is,
silent.
has
Lock
to do
screen.
with new gestures for TalkBack. Many of the new Android devices use a fingerprint sensor at the back of their device. So we decided why not utilize the fingerprint sensor for additional gestures to allow TalkBack users activate some of the favorite of their features. So we are introducing in O ability for an accessibility service such as TalkBack to utilize fingerprint sensor. The gestures available to the user are swiping left, right, up, or down. These gestures are assignable, so the user can decide what TalkBack features each gesture will launch. Again, as a developer of an accessibility service, you will have to request a special flag in order to be able to take advantage of fingerprint gestures. Fingerprint gestures work, again, only on O devices. I just wanted to point that out. And let me show you how this works.
Device unlocked. 3:10 p.m. Home screen 1 of inbox. Chrome. Camera.
So I'm going to attempt something very brave. I'll take a selfie.
Camera. Camera.
And I'll be using
0
fingerprint
faces.
gestures to do that.
Photo gallery. Shutter. Switch to front camera. Switch to back camera. 1 face. Right. Width 50% of screen. Very close. 0 faces. Shutter. Photo taken. Photo gallery. 1 face. Center.
All right.
Width 50% of screen. Very close. 0. Home screen 1 of 2. 3:10. Screen
Thank
off.
you very much. So
Ringer
these
silent.
this is
Lock
the
screen.
fingerprint gestures on, in Android O for accessibility. The next feature I would like to talk about is multilingual support. One of the things we realized is since Android is being used so much outside of the US, we badly need to support international users. And in O, we're introducing ability for the Google text-to-speech engine to automatically recognize languages that are appearing on the screen and switch text-to-speech to speak in that particular language. If you're a developer and you would like to trigger language automatic switching, you can use locale spans. You have to wrap your strings in locale spans to trigger that change. But before you get excited, let me show you how actually the language switching feature works.
Device unlocked. 3:11. Home. Overview. Overview. Showing home. Home. Home screen. Inbox. Pick message it. Inbox. Inbox. Remembered subject. Beautiful day. Remember to. From Carl to me. May 11th. More menu. Hi there. Hi there.
OK, so my wife, lovely wife, likes to pull little jokes at me. Well, in this particular case, this is not a joke. She sent me a message a few days ago, tried to invite me for dinner. And she does a lot of things in style. So this particular case is no exception. So she decided to send me a message in 4 languages. Because, we're so cool, right? So let's see how TalkBack deals with this particular situation.
More menu. Hi there. Comment box. Hi there.
Comment vas-tu? Moi, je suis très heureuse.
Jest piękna, słoneczna pogoda i gdzie byś nie spojrzał, kwitną kwiaty.
Всюди чути чарівний спів птахів.
星期三快乐，祝你们玩得尽兴。
Let's have dinner tonight.
OK? Yeah. Thank you. So that's, luckily both of us can speak all those languages, so I was able to understand what she said. So the languages were French, Polish, Ukrainian, and Chinese, just for your information. So, and the last feature I would like to talk about is the new accessibility shortcut. For quite a bit of time, users have been asking us for ability to turn off their favorite accessibility service regardless of which screen they're on. So they wanted a shortcut key that they can press and the service will toggle on and off. For example, if a blind person walked into the store that sold Android phones, they wanted to be able to launch TalkBack and start exploring the phone to decide whether this is something they wanted to purchase or not. Well, in O, we're introducing this accessibility shortcut. By default, it's configured to launch TalkBack. However, it can be reconfigured to launch any of the available accessibility services on your device. I want to point out that this works on any screen, even after you exit the Setup wizard. So once the shortcut is configured, it will be available to the user at all times. As a developer of an accessibility service, you will have to request this feature at runtime when your service runs. Otherwise, it is not available to you. So it's only available to accessibility services. And as you can guess, the demo is going to be pretty simple. So I'll show you how this works.
Home.
All I have to do right now is press two volume keys at the same time. And the accessibility service is off. If I press them again,
TalkBack on. Inbox.
That's it, and that's how
Ring
the
or
accessibility shortcut works.
Screen 15.
So as you can imagine, I just scratched the surface. There's much more coming up, but I would like Maya to talk about these other exciting services and APIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Victor, for the lovely demos. My name is Maya Ben-Ari. I'm a product manager on Android accessibility. The next set of features we're going to talk about are new APIs to framework to support new accessibility functionality. We're adding continuous gesture API. In Android Nougat, we added an API to allow performing gestures on behalf of the user. In Android O, we are extending this API to make it easier to perform continuous gestures. What does it mean? Is that, for example, it will be easier for a user using a wheelchair mouse or a hand tracker to perform gestures such as drag and drop, text selection, answering phone calls, and zooming in and out of maps. The next feature I'm very excited about, it's called the accessibility button in the navigation bar. What we added here is a new button, accessibility button, to the right of the navigation bar to quickly invoke context-dependent accessibility features. Let's give an example. Right now, we had magnification. So a user using magnification can triple tap to magnify the screen. However, some users find it challenging to perform the triple tap gestures. In Android O, we are adding an alternative to invoke magnification. So let me show you how this works. So I have the accessibility button on the bottom right of the screen. I can simply tap the button, and if I tap anywhere on the screen, I will magnify the content. Now I can move this around using 2 fingers, and if I want to demagnify it, I will just press the accessibility button again. Back to the slides. Now this is optionally supported by developers for devices with software-rendered navigation bar. And the button will be shown there only if there is an accessibility service or feature that supports it and is turned on. The next set of features are for people with print disabilities. Print disabilities are people who have difficulty of reading text. Those include people with dyslexia, farsighted, low vision, illiterate, or even people who just want to learn a new language. We recently launched a service called Select to Speak. Select to Speak is part of TalkBack 5.2. And what the service does is it vocalizes content on the screen by allowing users to select elements to read. Now, this service is available from Lollipop MR1 and up. Now, this is an example of how Select to Speak works. You can see a floating action button. Then the user can either tap an element or marquee select elements to read, and the content will be read out loud. In Android O, we're adding additional functionality for Select to Speak, including reading the whole page, advanced controller to move backward and next or adjust the speed. We add also word level highlighting, and we integrated this service into the setup wizard. Now, let me show you how it works. So I have here the accessibility button, and if I long press on the accessibility button, I can show that also I have a service which uses this button called Select to Speak. I will select that one, and if I will tap the button again, Then I will be shown a controller bar. At this point, I can drag and drop or move the controller bar on the screen. Now, I can either support the functionality I already have. For example, I can marquee select or tap an element.
Maps. Clock.
And it will be read out loud. Now, what I can also have is continuous reading.
69 degrees Fahrenheit. Wednesday, May 17th. Maps. Clock. Play Store. Chrome. Drive.
I'll stop that one. Now, we also have the select to speak. It can read the whole page, and it can read the whole sentences, and I can go backward and forward with the sentences and also increase and decrease the speed by pressing the plus and minus button. Let me show you how it works.
Navigate up. Select to speak. Settings. On. When select to speak is on, you can tap specific items on your screen to hear. First, tap the, then you can tap a specific item like text or an image. Drag your finger across the screen to select multiple items. Tap the play button to hear everything.
Thank you. And this is Select to Speak, available in Android O and with TalkBack 5.2. Now, the next section is about testing. We'd like to make Android more accessible for everyone. And developers are a crucial part of this mission. You can develop better experience for people with disability, but a lot of it has to do with how you test your app for accessibility. In the next section, I'm going to talk about manual and automated testing for accessibility. Now let's start with manual testing. The first thing that you want to do is you want to get familiar yourself and understand how the experience works with Android accessibility services, specifically with TalkBack and Switch Access. So download TalkBack, turn it on, and cover your eyes, and try to go through the experience in your app. You'd like to notice whether your app is representing correctly the content for TalkBack. For example, maybe you have unlabeled buttons, or maybe you're missing context description, or maybe you have controllers which are hard to interact with. Pay special attention for issues that may impact users efficiently while you are performing command flows. Now, if it works well with TalkBack, it will also likely work well with BrailleBack and Select to Speak, because what you are doing is you are actually testing your app's output. You are testing whether you are representing correctly your content to the accessibility service. The next thing that you want to test is you want to test with Switch Access. As Patrick mentioned, Switch Access is a service targeted for users with motor impairment who has difficulty interacting with their device. In that case, the user connects something which is called an adaptive switch. This is an example of an adaptive switch. Now, the adaptive switch can contain 2 buttons, less or more. And in that case, the user can map 1 button for a next operation and 1 for an enter. Now, if you don't have an adaptive switch, you can just connect an external keyboard and map your keyboard buttons to specific activities in Switch Access. Now, after you do that, you want to go through command flow, and you want to note whether Switch Access interacts correctly with your app UI. Now, if it works well with Switch Access, it will also likely work well with Voice Access, because what you are doing at that point, you are testing your app input. With Switch Access and TalkBack, you are testing both your app output and input. Now, testing Switch Access with Switch Access and TalkBack is the best way for you to understand the experience that you are providing for users with different needs. But this is not all, because there are multiple other features available on the platform, including magnification, enlarged text, To facilitate accessibility testing, we also provide a tool which is called Accessibility Scanner. Accessibility Scanner is the standalone app which you can download free from the Play Store. And the app is targeted for app developer and QA testers, and it suggests ways for you to improve the accessibility of your app. How you can use it? Just download it, turn it on, and then you will see a floating action button on your screen. Bring the UI you are interested in into the foreground, press the button, and then Accessibility Scanner will analyze the UI and will show some suggestion of how to improve your accessibility. And in this example, it shows an example for improving your text contrast. We shipped this app at March last year, and we're very happy to announce that in the last year, user used Accessibility Scanner to find over 1 million opportunities for improving their app accessibility. Definitely check it out and download Accessibility Scanner from the Play Store. And a bit about automated testing. We also created accessibility testing framework to allow you to perform automated testing. Accessibility Testing Framework is an open source library that provides runtime evaluation on real Android UI constructs. We integrated this testing framework into two common test frameworks called Robolectric and Espresso. If you're already using those testing framework, you can simply turn on accessibility test functionality within those framework, and then you might see some of your tests start failing because they could have an improved accessibility. Lastly, we launched a new section about accessibility on developer.android.com, and this can help you guide to better understand how to implement accessibility in your app. Specifically, we have a page about testing your app accessibility. In general, we recommend a balance between manual testing and automated testing for making your app accessible. With this page, the page summarizes how you can develop a holistic test strategy that improve both manual and automated testing. But with all this testing, there is no better way than interacting with actual user and conducting user research. And for that, Astrid and Melissa are going to tell you all about that.
Thank you, Maya. I'm Astrid Weber, and I work on user experience research for accessibility engineering at Google.
And I'm Melissa Barnhart, and I'm a UX researcher on Android.
So what is actually UX research, and why do we need it? Imagine you have the dream of opening a bar. I mean, how many of us haven't had it at some point in our lives? You have these cool design ideas for the interior of your bar. You know exactly what you want to serve on your drinking menu. And you really know that the music you're going to play is what you basically have at home and you play yourself the most. Basically, while you're building your bar, you're imagining how perfect a bar could be if it would just be the perfect place for someone with exactly the same taste like yourself. Basically, your users, they are just like yourself, right? Chances are, unfortunately, that your bar might be empty. And your business idea might be failing. Like over 50% of all bars and restaurants are failing within the first year of their existence. And I'm pretty sure that all the owners of these bars and restaurants really wanted to create a good experience and really made choices that they would have taken themselves. And this brings us up to the importance of user experience research and design for restaurants and bars, but also for technology development. Because unfortunately, the failure rate among startups is at 90%, which is much higher than actually the one among restaurants. At the same time, research shows that if you are testing your own assumptions and your user needs often and early, your chances increase so much more that you will end up with a well-rated app and satisfied users. Which brings us very close to the definition of actual and objective UX research, which really is all about changing your own perspective to that of your users to understand their needs, including all their accessibility needs. User research focuses on understanding user behaviors, needs, and motivations through various research techniques. It is the process of understanding the impact of design on an audience. Now that we have a common understanding of the concept of UX research, what does it actually entail? UX research is a set of research methods that can help you during the whole process of your product development cycle. UX research methods such as field studies, interviews, or competitive analysis are very well suited in the beginning of your product development work, because they are especially useful in order to understand how technology usage works and how new innovative fields work. Once you have decided what to build and you have a first prototype, research methods such as usability studies, participatory design exercises, or remote research are actually really useful for you to understand what works and what doesn't work in the hands of your users. And lastly, once your product is out there in the market, you really want to understand how it's doing, right? Research methods such as cognitive walkthroughs, research methods such as log analysis, diary studies, as well as remote testing really help you at that stage of your product development to understand how the app is doing in the market and if people really like it. And with that, I hand it over to Melissa, who has a very concrete example for you from our recent accessibility Android development on O.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Astrid. So today I'd like to show you exactly how accessibility research has informed the design process for Android. Let's take the example of settings. We want all users to be able to easily access and understand settings that are relevant to them, including users with accessibility needs. Here we have a screenshot of the accessibility settings page for Android N. When planning for Android O, we had some assumptions about this page. Firstly, we felt that it was a bit unorganized, making it difficult for users to find what they need. Secondly, we questioned whether or not categories like services and system had any real meaning to users. So we turned to research to check our assumptions and make more informed design decisions. We used two research methods, usability studies and intercepts. And as Astrid just mentioned, these methods are well suited for the design develop stage. So we started with usability studies. In these studies, we invited people with visual impairments to our offices and prompted them to interact with the accessibility settings page you just saw. Now, we immediately observed some issues. Specifically, the participants could not always find the settings we asked them to find, and even when they did, they weren't always sure what those settings would do. Now, our approach to this research was iterative, so we'd learn things in one study, adjust the design, and then retest the adjusted design in the next study. But we wanted to hear from a wider, more diverse audience. So we went to a conference. In January, we attended the Assistive Technology Industry Association conference in Orlando, Florida. With just a clipboard, pen, paper, and phone, we approached conference attendees and asked them for 10 minutes of feedback on our latest designs. These intercepts allowed us to gather a lot of feedback in a relatively short time frame. In just 2 days, we talked to 15 people with visual, cognitive, and motor impairments, as well as AT professionals and educators. As a result of this research, we verified a lot of our assumptions and fine-tuned our designs. And here's a sneak peek at the accessibility settings page for Android O. On the right, you'll see that we're introducing categorizations by utility. So instead of categories like services and system, you'll find categories like screen readers and display. Also, we've added colorful icons to make Android services pop. Lastly, below each setting, we've included a short description to explain what the setting does. Now, accessibility research helped guide this design approach, and it can help you too. So if you want to build products for the widest possible audience and genuinely improve people's lives, consider incorporating accessibility research into your current process. I promise you don't need fancy equipment or a big budget to get started. Think creatively about how you can talk to users with accessibility needs. Maybe you attend a conference like we did. Maybe you reach out to a local organization or university. Or maybe you have a friend with dyslexia or colorblindness who would be willing to try your app and give you 15 minutes of feedback. Try to include one person with accessibility needs in your next research study and see what you learn. The difference between 0 and even a little bit of data is astounding. And with that, I will hand it back over to Astrid.
Thanks, Melissa. Those of you working on consumer-facing apps hopefully already marked your calendars now to conduct some accessibility research as soon as you're back in the office. Those of you who work on developer-facing applications might be wondering, but what about my target group? Well, the good news is they can also benefit from UX research. And we have an example of our very own accessibility scanner app about how that UX research really helped us to develop a better application. We tested accessibility scanner with designers, test engineers, developers, and product managers. We did early-stage prototyping with some paper mocks. In addition to that, we also tested the name itself. Yes, you heard correctly. Accessibility scanner was not born with that name. We had a long list of options, but rather just following our own intuition or preference, we asked our users in interviews, because we wanted to understand which name would be most memorable and what people are associating with each of the options. Thanks to UX research, we also made some visual and interaction design changes to the application. One of the visual design changes entails that we do not use colors anymore to distinguish the kind of issues being detected. Having a diverse sample of users really helped us there, because the colorblind participants of our study clearly signaled to us that they felt left out of the experience if you used color, because they could not necessarily distinguish the elements based on that factor. We also improved the overall flow of the application by making it easy to just click on any element of detection and then get a short description of the issue. This way, the application became especially useful and usable to those new to accessibility testing. And on that note, I will hand it back to Patrick with our final thoughts and an outlook on what's next.
All right, thank you, Astrid. So, I hope everyone's inspired to go home, look at your own products, look at your own apps, think about accessibility, the benefit that it can have on these users. Along those lines, I have a few challenges to the developers in the audience. So the first one is familiarize yourself with accessibility services and these APIs that were mentioned. So when you go home, turn on TalkBack, turn on Switch Access, put yourself in the shoes of these users and run through your app, see what things you uncover. The second is to download Accessibility Scanner, right? Download it. It's very easy. You can get it. You can test your app. Very easy to find some low-hanging fruit, some quick and easy ways to improve the accessibility of your app. And finally, think about performing user research with users that have an accessibility need. So find a family member, a friend, someone in your community, go to a conference, sit with them as they use your app, and I bet you'll be surprised with things you learn. We have a few other really interesting things happening at Google I/O for accessibility. So we have a couple other sessions, Designing for the Next Billion Users and Pragmatic Accessibility, tomorrow on stage 5. We also have a sandbox just back here. This is your chance to come talk to us, learn more about accessibility, see these demos, speak to a Googler one-on-one and get more information. We also have the, on Thursday at 6:30, we have the Google Play Awards, and there'll be an awesome award for the best accessibility experience. So I recommend you check that out. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and make sure you keep in touch. You can use our Twitter handle @Google Access. Thank you.